So last week I talked pretty brutally about the first 7 issues of Jason Aaron's Incredible Hulk run. While I liked a few things about it, I did not really care for it overall, but I already had Volume 2, so I was already committed to reading the rest of the run, despite my less than lukewarm feelings toward the first half. And this is maybe the first time this has happened to me in recent memory, but I actually liked the second half of Aaron's run much more than the first half. Usually, for me, when I'm looking at some big run on an established title by somewhat big names, usually I like the beginning and then it starts to go downhill. Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men, Grant Morrison's run on Batman, Joss Whedon's run on Astonishing X-Men, Mark Waid's 3-boot version of the Legion of Superheroes. So when I saw that I didn't like Volume 1 of Aaron's Hulk, I certainly didn't expect to enjoy Volume 2, especially not as much as I did. So what changed for me in between these two volumes? Many things, I would say. One of my more minor problems with Volume 1 was the art. I've never been a huge fan of Marc Silvestri, although I liked some of what he did on Hulk more than I have some of his previous work. And Willis Portacio wasn't really knocking it out of the park on Hulk, in my humble. This volume sidesteps the problem of finding a definitive artist for this run, and has a different artist for each issue. I'm sure this is a nightmare to set up, logistically, for whatever editor has to try and find an artist who will be able to contribute an issue, and then has to do the exact same thing a month later. But from an audience point of view, I really liked it. The variety spices things up in my humble. If you don't like Portacio's art, then you might like Steve Dillon for an issue, and if you don't like him, you might like Billy Tan, etc. If this run had been running much longer and had one consistent artist for its whole existence, then this would feel alarmingly sudden. But since this method only began 8 issues in, I quite liked it and found it easy to get used to. Another of my major problems with Volume 1 was how padded it felt. It took 7 issues to cover ground that I feel like could have easily been covered in 4 issues. And after reading Volume 2, I am even more angered at how long it took Aaron to get where he did in Volume 1. Here, Aaron goes in the complete other direction. Instead of one big giant arc that takes forever to set up and take down, Aaron opted to go for a whole bunch of single-issue standalone stories in this volume. And that always makes me happy. I've talked about this many times before in past videos, so I won't spend much time talking about it here. But the single thing that I hate most about the modern comic book industry is the decompression of stories, which I sincerely believe drives away readers from titles that they might potentially be interested in. Here, each issue is a complete done-in-one adventure, but they all loosely tie together until the last half of this volume, when it's more of an arc of sorts, though even then, it's only 2 or 3 issues of arc instead of a 7-issue mess. With that being said, one of the pros of doing longer multi-part stories is that if you really hit on something that the audience likes, then you don't have to worry about finding something else that they might like the following month. But when every issue is a standalone, when you have one issue that is a huge sensation that does everything right, you might not be that lucky in the next issue. For example, I really liked the Underwater issue, and especially the Space Station issue. I liked the Dog Drug Lord and the City of Sasquatches issues as well, but not nearly as much as the other two. One thing that this half of the run does especially well is that it takes some really outlandish concepts and just plays them straight, and to great effect. Is it ridiculous that a humanoid talking dog would be a drug lord? Absolutely. But in a universe where a gigantic purple Roman gladiator type eats planets, it fits very well. It doesn't matter if the concepts are absurd, as long as the character bits are played seriously. And for the most part, the character bits are played very nicely, I thought. At least in each issue of the standalone issues they were, but I'll get to that more in a minute. In my review for Volume 1, I mentioned that Jason Aaron had a really fantastic idea in the form of the Mad Squad, a government group that hunts down mad scientists. And a complaint that I had was that this group gets almost no screen time when it's deserving of its own series, in my humble. Now this volume gives us another instance of this. This time, the idea is that during the Cold War, the Soviets sent a group of scientists and super soldiers into a space station, waiting for all-out war with America to start. But war never came, and when the Berlin Wall came down, the people on the station were forgotten. Eventually, all of the scientists died, and all of the super soldiers died except for 2 of them. They ended up having something like 13 kids, and then the mother eventually died. At the end of the issue, Hulk helps the kids escape, while he goes back to Earth. The kids go on to explore the rest of the galaxy, starting with Mars, and then they are more or less never seen again, which is a crime. This one issue had so much potential. An entire ongoing series could have been made out of these kids, I think. Where's my Soviet Super Soldier Kid Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome Star Trek series, Aaron? Anyway, I mentioned that, for the most part, the characterization is handled rather well here. But if you'll recall, in my review for Volume 1, I had a major problem with how Bruce Banner was immediately an evil supervillain with no real progression from meek, nice Bruce Banner to evil, twisted Bruce. Well, here, our whole running theme is that the Hulk has to stay angry to prevent Bruce Banner from being unleashed on the world. And each issue has Hulk in some insane scenario that Bruce has put him in, and Hulk tries to get out without the circumstances allowing Bruce to win. In this way, it reminds me of Quantum Leap. Each issue a new adventure where Hulk finds himself in some sort of dangerous situation, be it a group of dogmen attacking him, or being stuck underwater, or stuck on a space station, etc. So anyway, just like in the last volume, Banner is still more or less our bad guy, or at least Hulk considers him to be a bad guy after how he behaved in the previous volume. But for seemingly no reason at all, Banner goes from being a psychopath who the government seems to think needs to be assassinated, to being just a nice dude who wants his Hulk back and isn't really such a bad guy anyway. In a way, my problem here is the same problem that I had with Volume 1. There's no progression of character. Depending on the circumstances, I'd be fine with a character going from being a nice dude to a bad guy, or vice versa. But let's have it take some time so that the audience can buy it. In the span of a little more than a year, Bruce Banner went from being a normal dude with a Hulk problem, to being an unstable maniac without a Hulk problem, back to being a normal nice dude who wants to have a Hulk problem again. I am curious if Jason Aaron knew by this point that his run was coming to a close, and that Mark Waid wanted Banner and Hulk back together so that he could do his own thing with Indestructible Hulk. I don't know, but that is the only reason I can think of that Banner's characterization turns at the drop of a hat. But if this is the reason why he's handled so poorly here, it does not explain why he was handled so poorly in Volume 1. Speaking of Banner and Hulk being fused back together, that doesn't really make any sense, like at all. In Volume 1, we find out that Hulk asks Dr. Doom to remove Banner from him completely. To do this, Doom somehow cloned Banner, and then removed the Banner parts of Hulk's brain and put them in the clone. And then Volume 1 ends with Hulk and Banner being caught in a gamma bomb blast. Bruce's body is then destroyed, and immediately afterward, Bruce's psyche is back in Hulk's mind. But how? There is never a given reason how or why this could happen. I get that this book is not even kinda trying to be realistic. It's got dog drug lords, hillbilly Atlanteans, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome in space, and a city of Sasquatches. It's trying pretty hard to not be anywhere even close to realistic. And I can totally buy that a normal human being getting caught in the blast of a bomb would turn him into a Hulk, as long as we are told that this is how the universe works in this comic book. But I cannot see why Hulk and Banner, after being separated, would so quickly and arbitrarily be put back together. Again, I'm wondering if around halfway into his run, Aaron knew that he'd be off the book soon, so he rushed putting Banner back into Hulk's body to do the rest of his run. I am certain if he had taken an extra issue or two, he could have found a much more plausible way for these two to be reunited than what he did. Overall, I was very pleased with this book. It could be that I wasn't expecting very much at all from this run after the mess that was Volume 1, but I genuinely believe the series took an upswing in quality, and it really makes me wish we could have had much more than 2 volumes for Aaron to play around with the Hulk and his status quo, especially if they had been as fun and enjoyable as this one. There's still a few problems that I have with characterization, or just how a few things lined up in the way of plot, but overall this book is much better than the previous volume. And so, that's what I have to say about this book. I hope you guys enjoyed this review and found it informative, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to come back tomorrow for some other kind of video. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.